Welcome everybody. Today we are presenting two very interesting artists, Mariko Hori from Japan and Ronald van der Meijs from the Netherlands. Currently they both live in Amsterdam. Mariko studied architecture and her artistic practice is focused on alternative ways of building things without building and creating some atmospheric environments and dealing with really small objects. She will tell you more about it. And Ronald van der Meijs, he's um, also connected to architecture. He studied fine art and design at the University of Applied Sciences in Breda, in Netherlands. And his practice is focused on site-specific installations that are usually generating sound and within the topic nature versus technology. They will first tell something about their individual practices and later on they will explain what they are doing right now as a collective, as a duo. They're also artists in residence in Novi Sad within the program of School of Artists in Residence and the project Art Body Art. They also had exhibition this Monday. Called Tones in Between. The exhibition and multimedia performance happened in School Gallery in Novi Sad. So we can have first part when we present Mariko as individual practice. Then we can have Q&A, and later Ronald. So we can basically have 3 times Q&A, or if you really want to ask something during the presentation, please feel free. So Mariko, go on.
Yes, thank you, Bojana. Dobar dan. My name is Mariko Hori. I'm a Japanese artist. As she introduced about me, I'm kind of visual artist. I used to based in Belgrade, but from this year I'm living in Amsterdam and working as a collective with Ronald van der Meijs. And we were at Novi Sadu for our research project and for the future. But since we just started working as a collective, for this presentation today, we have more things to show as an individual artist separately at first, and then later on we can talk about what we have done in Novi Sad a little bit. So this, let me first introduce this one shortly. This was one of our first collaboration sound performance, making a sound with all the plastic things, like some stuff which we bought in the supermarket. But this video he will show you later. But first, I'd like to introduce some of my general practice. And since I have a really horrible Asian accent in my English, when you don't understand any words, just feel free to ask me at any moment, please. Okay. Okay, this is one of my latest work. Just play the sound. It was installation work made for Center for Contemporary Art in Plovdiv, which was European Capitals of Culture this year. This place used to be Turkish hammam from the 16th century. And since my practice is atmosphere, especially which old building or old object have, and I think this atmosphere is architecture itself, and this atmosphere is made from particles which is floating in the air. So in this work, I wanted to show the audience, experience the audience to realize that existence of all the particles in the air. So when you enter this room, you will listen the sound of water. And I'm not sure if you've ever been to inside of Turkish bath, but in general, you have like 15 of small window like this on the ceiling. And two of the ceiling was opened, so I put some system which makes water drops. And like every 10 seconds, water is dripping from the ceiling and makes a sound. And this water is collected inside of this antique bowl. But anyway, this sound was very small though. Yeah, so this work, when these water drops came down, this water is collecting particles from the air. And at the same time, this movement of water drops are making really tiny wind, which makes this golden flag or golden leaf to dance a bit. And you can realize that how small actually we are a part of the world and so on. Okay, so I go next one.
This is your last artwork?
Yes, this was my last work. The previous one was in September as individual. Newest work it was. And this was also one of the latest. In this summer, in August, I participated in Nakanojo Biennale in Japan, which is one of the unique biennale that you stay in the middle of nowhere in a very small village, and you will have opportunity to work with local people in one of the abandoned house or in the nature or whatever. And I had opportunity to use one of the room of 400 years ago house, historically important one. And in this room, one guy, he was known as a good scholar of Western science, was it's called Choe Takano, was Harvard, because in that time the Japanese government was closed to foreign country, and since he has good knowledge about Western culture, Western science, our government didn't like him, and he was escaping from the government. And so, because he was suffering in this room, I could feel so strong energy when I entered this room. So I decided to make artwork using the atmosphere itself in the room, which is floating in the air. This one was the dust, which I collected in Netherlands. It was a house of his teacher. It's called the Siebold. And because in my theory, dust can be made from particles who existed in that place like a long time ago. So probably in the dust of dust from his house, part of his body is still here, and I brought his particles to Japan, to his student house, the room where his students used to live, this Choe Takano, and part of his body is also inside of this room, and in this particle level, they could meet each other again after 200 years or something like this. So this is how installation look like. And this is a sort of video performance which I collected this dust in his Siebold house, this house of Siebold in Netherlands. And I also made a video projection in the room, but from the projector, I could also show that lots of particles like stardust in the room floating in the air, and you can realize how many particles, maybe several of them are from Choe Takano, this guy who are hiding in the room. Also, I made this installation in the same room, which is made from his Choe's related things, like his favorite water from hot spring in the neighborhood, and stones from the ground or mountain where he used to go for a walk in the night time and so on. And I also have made, sorry, because this one is a bit too loud, I think. This work I also made part of this installation. Sorry. Because this video I made it in the, no, how it always stops. It always go to the max. Sorry. No. How come? Sorry, I'm not. This. Okay, I shot this kind of video installation in Italy when I stayed as an artist in residency in very small village, like same kind of atmosphere with the village where I was exhibiting this Biennale. And I asked these local people in Italy to express their feelings for unknown foreign countries in the room where it's called as Oriental room, which was made from like 200 years ago, like the same period of time this Japanese guy was hiding in the room. And this villa of where this room was is also like the villa of one explorer, Italian explorer. And this painter who made this room for him never went to China. But from his story, he made this room into super oriental way. And when you enter this room, you could also feel some kind of feelings towards foreign countries which you don't know. And I think this atmosphere or feelings when you think about something can also make the atmosphere different. And all the village people who lives around this villa also, they don't even speak English and they are not so much familiar with foreign countries. So they could maybe make some kind of familiar feelings which Choe Takano, this Japanese guy, used to feel about himself or from his students, because they all have strong wish for foreign countries, but they never went there. And I think it's other way around. They are from western side thinking about east side, and this Japanese guy was thinking about the western country from the east side. And now it's in different era, but still it could be kind of similar atmosphere they are making. And I don't even understand what they are talking about now, but maybe that is why you can see or you can feel atmosphere more from there around, I think. Okay, but I go next one, because that video is so long. So this one is another installation. First I made this last year, but this photo is from this year. In this work, I'm questioning about the way of communication in nowadays. The table of cosmographia. In here, table means two different meanings. Like one is the table which serve these glasses on the top of, like tables like this one, and the table for second meaning is some kind of note or score which gives you lots of information. Because and what I wanted to question about this is because this installation is kind of explaining about stars and the planet in the universe. So I made some kind of universe on the table. And I think in the ancient period of time, all the human beings could communicate with whole the universe with only observing the stars. Because in lots of like civilization, or the ancient civilization time, they could find lots of similar symbols from the same stars, even they didn't communicate. Like Chinese also have like their own zodiac, and maybe Maya and the Western, like ancient Greek too. And they all see like similar animals from the stars, even they didn't communicate each other. So I think they could really see something like they could really communicate not without language or without like having drinks or without any like systematic information and so on. But nowadays, like this table with drinks, with the glasses, you really need to communicate over the dinner or over the drinks, or systematic information, which I also made a collage work like this with some plants and information of the stars and star maps. And to understand things in modern times, people need information and drinks, and that I was questioning about, especially for the opening of the exhibition, because you always need drinks and need to read the information of the artist before feeling the artworks. That was about these topics. And how I made this installation work first was actually I was staying in the Museimatsura in Novi, Novi. And there sometimes they organize a wedding party. And in Serbia, when you drink at wedding party, you hit the glass and you break the glass for good luck. So next day, when I woke up after the wedding party, there are always lots of broken glasses. And that's how I started to think of this work, because it's also about communication in a way.
And stones are, where did you collect?
Stones are actually from everywhere. Wherever I go, I collect stones. So one can be from Serbia, can be from Sweden or Sri Lanka, also Mongolia, and Kosovo too, I think. Because it's also representing about communication without languages. Okay, and this one is also about communication, but this one is more between humans and the earth. So in this work was made for London Biennale in Mongolia, and I made some kind of interactive installation which all the audience can try to catch the earth with this fishing rod. This fishing rod was made from, half part is made from this structure to make a gel tent. These nomadic people are making this nomadic house tent. And this is one of the structure which represents some kind of artificial things. And this one was twig found in nature. So this tool is actually connecting human and nature at the same time. And using this tool, this fishing rod is connected with the ground of Mongolia, this huge plain place in the middle of nowhere. And in China, there is a saying that when you do fishing, actually you are communicating with nature. Because fishing is more, you need to spend lots of time with waiting, and while waiting, you feel the wind, and you talk with the sky, you listen to the bird, and you can understand you can maybe forget about your human beings, and you can be just a part of nature. So, and this theme of Biennale was urbanization, that Mongolia is still, there are lots of spiritual people living, but at the same time, like most of the population lives in Ulaanbaatar, which is completely different from here, and people started to lose their way of communication towards nature. But when you tried to catch the earth, if you pull too much of this fishing rod, because it's connected by fish line to the earth, if you tug too much, this fish line will break, and in the end you will never catch it. And in that way, you will learn how to balance as a human to deal with nature and respect the nature and how great the earth is.
So is this basically fishing the earth?
Yes, fishing the earth.
Yeah. This was performance or some participative performance, because I see some person.
Yes, like everyone could try. It's kind of installation, but
it
also
there, it was just fixed there,
yes.
And then you could come.
Yes, you could come and you can try at any time. Okay. Okay, and this one is a study about atmosphere. This is also sort of installation and performance at the same time. This when I install something as an installation work, I mostly choose found object, and I don't make object, but what I make is space in between. This is most important for my artwork. And in this work, I wanted to examine that how I can change the atmosphere with the way how I place the object. So I asked this guy, he is a Serbian Buddhist monk, and try to move all the objects slowly and try to find the best position for him, very slowly. And every moment, object moves, and the atmosphere is always changing at any moment, I think. In Japan, there is a way of saying called ma. Ma means something in between object or in between time. Because in Japanese culture, we admire emptiness. Actually, emptiness is, I think, most important than object or than structure itself. And for my art, it's also the same. It's in between space or in between time when he make pose. This is sort of a man. This is explaining everything, including the object.
How did you make collaboration with this monk?
This guy, he was my friend, and I just asked him because I could do this by myself too, but I thought it would be more like beautiful, interesting to ask someone who can move as a monk to represent.
So from where did you collect these objects? These were just random objects
Yes,
you chose?
yes, random objects which I found on the street sometimes, and sometimes bought in the flea market or nylon piazza, for example. I have lots of favorite objects, but also what is important for me is combination of objects, balance of objects, and also each object needed to have a certain aura. Mostly it needed to be old, to have a story, or to have some kind of aura, and it can make atmosphere more richer and deeper, I think. So maybe I wouldn't use like a computer or iPhone for my installation. And this is also part of from the same exhibition in Domambran in last year. This artwork is like I'm studying about space in between the object and the future and the past. This falling stone, actually this is hung floating by fish line from the ceiling, but it represents that this stone is falling down now. And while this stone is falling, this plate is already broken. And this falling stone is representing at this moment and also at the past from like 1 second ago. And this already broken plate expresses the future. And in my town, like time and space is kind of similar, have a really slight difference. And plus past and future is also having very slight difference. That's, I think time was kind of an idea which was invented by human beings. And through this work, I'm also questioning about the concept of the time. So this is one of my kind of iconic artwork, I would say, that I do a lot with different materials. This one is broken speedometer, which also represents the time. And this is glasses with coal, and so on. And this one is also kind of representing the time, idea of time. This installation made from better things from the past. This object is from Cycladic, ancient Greek object. And this one is the light. It's representing hope for the future. And this is a tool for observing. Because nowadays people are always complaining or claiming that things were better in the past, or just thinking about future a lot and don't focus at this moment now. But if you try to look too much about past or future using this observing tool like this tool is connected with a small metal parts like this with fish line, and if you use this tool, this metal part will make the sound, and this sound is expressing the sound of this moment and awareness, and it will bring you back to the ground and remind you of focusing at this moment. This one work was also exhibited in Belgrade, 2017 at Udeset. So this was a collaboration performance with Bojana for Japanese Serbian Film Festival under the theme of vision. And in this work, we are examining about the vision and how we see the country from inside of the country and outside of the country, using the way one of the Japanese comedy skit called Nininbaori. It literally means two persons in one court. In general, this is like this skit is played in the parties and to make fun. Like two persons will be in one court, and one person will show only the face, and another person will act as her face. Yes, hand
and it's usually feeding other person in this Japanese game.
Yeah.
And here actually we try to do this, to use this form to actually target something else, like more like freedom of speech in our own countries. So we were sharing our experiences about our own countries, but in different languages. So Mariko performed in Serbian, and I did it in Japanese, and it's also telling more about this censorship that is surrounding us everywhere. So she didn't have courage to share her experience with Japan and why she actually left Japan. So I was reading her opinions, and she was reading my opinions about Serbia and what is frustrating us, especially as female artists.
Yes, that's true. Yes, thank you. So I liked this performance so much. And also I sometimes do collaboration with snails. Like this time this snail is working as my performer. That whenever I put snails on the strings, they will go up slowly, like 30 minutes until like 50 centimeter, and they will stop and sleep. So this slow movement is of snails is making this pendulum to swing. This pendulum and snail both express the idea of traveling and time, especially towards the ancient period of time, because this installation was made for Plovdiv in Bulgaria, which has 6,000 years of history. And in this city, you can feel really good atmosphere everywhere from a long time history. And I wanted to bring all the atmosphere from the city into the gallery to suggest the audience to feel the ancient period of time using like found materials from the street. This pendulum and snails as a suggesting like a guide, as a guide to go back to the history, and some stones from the street. But actually, that street, this stone was taken by one of the ancient hill, which is not there any longer. And so, when I make this kind of installation work, to represent the atmosphere, it's always like minimalistic and having more space in between the object. And in this way, I think my artwork is really kind of becoming more bit characteristic, or in my way, I think, because people always see that I'm Japanese from this way of installing. Even I don't want to show my nationality from my work, but I can't do in another way, and I think I make the atmosphere more using really minimalistic way of installing objects, I think. So since I really...
Tell me just what is your relationship with this floating object that we are seeing all the time?
Floating object. Actually, I don't know. I really love float things, and I think because if it's float, I feel it can make more, I don't know, spread, space in between, and maybe it's producing more particle from this object itself, because I use more old things, old object, which has aura itself. And if one side is touching on the floor, maybe from this under part, this can't produce things, particles, I guess. And since I love this atmosphere so much, I also love researching about old places or abandoned places, because all the abandoned or forgotten place has strong energy inside, and which all made from everything which used to exist inside of here in certain moment. This is one of my favorite abandoned church in Italy. And this is one of the best one I've been so far. But in Novi Sad, for our collaboration work, this time we also visited several, or 12 of abandoned sites to make research for the new bigger work for 2021, which we will talk about later. That's something like this, and collected all the materials from the site, including sound and some kind of trash inside, and the air and so on. And made some kind of installation work which was inspired by everything. Like we especially like we were really inspired by this combination, this moss and broken glass and some another materials which can't be easily seen in the city, because if these broken things are somewhere on the street, it will be cleaned in general, but it's in the abandoned place, this broken stuff can stay like more than like 10 years and more, and it will have kind of special way of rotting, I think. And in combination with the nature, it was very beautiful and already perfect artwork for us. And this was our favorite painting.
So you used these objects from this building. You later used at your exhibition in Novi Sadu, and also did sound. Sound installation. Shall we continue maybe with Ronald?
Yes.
And later you can tell about your collaboration.
Yeah, sorry that I don't have a PDF, and that's on purpose because I wanna change my my lecture every different location. So for today I made some other choices of works. Would be too long lecture to show all my work. So I make very big steps. And during the works, I will try to explain what my work is about, etc. As Bojana already mentioned, I was working in the field of architecture for about 8 years, and on different reasons or all kinds of reasons, I stopped doing that, and my idea was to make architecture only with sound, and that's how I started all over again, or let's say I went on with my practice, but more in contemporary art, and by working with sound, it actually quite soon developed again, but more in the way of making installation work, which makes sound, generates sound actually, because before that I was working with a lot of samplers and stuff, and put it all in a laptop, and for exhibitions I showed it to the audience with some speakers, and I noticed that only a couple of speakers was for me not fulfilling enough, because I noticed that audience is not really listening for the whole sound piece. They just walk to one of the exhibition spaces and listen to the sound for a couple of seconds or even perhaps minutes, and that's about it, and they go through. And I started to be a bit frustrated about that behavior. So I thought I must do something else. It must be a work which generates sound, so people can see how the sound is being generated, and preferably in a mechanical way. So it has a bit of an educational point of view, and in that way people can really read where the sound is coming from. And that's something I was very much interested in. Also because I want to work with nature on one hand, and technology, more specifically mechanical technology on the other hand. And I try to combine these two and let them communicate with each other as a sort of an interaction. And because I'm really fascinated in how we as Western people try to control everything, and not in the least nature itself. I use nature to control my installations. And actually, not this one, but a similar one was actually my first installation I made after doing the sound architecture. And I show this because it also gives a good example of what I try to do. This one is it's about 5,000 bicycle bells. And the long ones are on high pins of 1 meter, so they start touching each other when the wind is blowing, which generates a very subtle sound. And otherwise, in autumn, I put it preferably under a tree which has fruits. In this case, on the left side, outside of the picture, there's a huge oak tree hanging above this installation. And in autumn, all these acorns fall out of the tree onto these bicycle bells. And sorry? No. No, I only have some sound documents of this installation, and that's because I'm never there when an acorn falls out of the tree. And that's one of my main topics there, because I always try to create this sort of tension field for the audience. Which lies somewhere between desire and acceptance. So for people, audience, it's very frustrating when there's no acorns fell on that installation, right? And so you actually have to accept the situation how it is. But that's very difficult for our Western people. So it's hilarious to see, because mostly it's men. They walk to this big oak trees and start to shake the tree, but it's way too big, doesn't do anything. But they really have this desire that one of these acorns falls out of it. So.
There's a picture with the animal trying to go through.
Oh yeah, with a pig. Yeah, that's one of my latest. Yeah, that was at a pig farm. Yeah. So I thought introduce a new natural or artificial natural element, and I tried to let these pigs run through the bells. But well, they got a bit crazy though, so it was not really working very well. Well, this is another example. Yeah. Also, what I try to do with all my installation work, actually, what Mariko does too, is I react on the location. So it always has something to do with either the surrounding atmosphere, with wind, or the meaning of the place, or the history of the place. And yeah, for so far this installation, it's also actually the only installation which I'm, well, not the only one, but I make this in a series. Till now I had 7 different kind of structures made of these bicycle bell. So I do this every couple of years when a location is really asking for it. And it's the only work I do which is a bit similar as painting. So I don't have any plan at all. I only feel that I have to make this installation on a certain spot. And I just start somewhere. And during the process of putting in these bells, it becomes something or a structure. And mostly I'm busy with this kind of installations for, let's say, a week. And then about 6 hours a day, putting in these bells and looking for a sort of a direction. And sometimes it's not right, and then I take out 1,000 and start all over again. And slowly it becomes something like artificial nature. This is another installation I made for a factory in Eindhoven. It's a city in the south of Holland where Philips is coming from. And before Philips came into that town, it was actually a big town a town of, well, I think 300,000 people. And it consists out of an enormous amount of factories where cigars were produced. So it was the cigar city of Holland. And I named this installation, Please, can you smoke one for me, La Fumée? And because I want to react on this location, I thought, okay, I try to make something with the plant, the tobacco plant, but the tobacco plant itself, well, it doesn't do very much to have a sort of a movement to generate something. And then I was thinking about the cigar itself, and what is interesting about handmade cigars is that they all have their own, well, let's say, fastness of smoking, because they are made by hand, and none of the cigars are the same. So they have all a different burning rate when you smoke them. And that's what makes it interesting for me, like everything in nature, that these handmade cigars are a bit unpredictable because they have their own speed. And what this installation does is it smokes cigars and it plays these 4 different kind of recorders. And when the cigars are being smoked by this installation, the cigar is getting shorter, and these arms are slowly falling down on the holes of these recorders, and then the tone will slowly change. So, and it consists out of eight cigars. So normally this kind of performance which the installation makes takes about 20 minutes. I have a video, of course. Yes. Die blaast de fluit in de standaard. En de ander zit een zuiger. En die zaagt de sigaar aan. Dus op de minuut slaat dan dat het allemaal handgedraaide sigaren zijn, hebben ze natuurlijk allemaal een beetje eigen vastigheid. En dat betekent dat ik geen vat meer heb op de compositie. Wel. So this is in another exhibition, but it had a better video to explain it all. Okay. So these cigars are considered as the natural element in this installation, and because they are handmade, they have this unpredictable thing which I'm very much interested in, and because they are unpredictable in their burning rate, they control the installation so far, and that's why there is an sort of a composition which is controlled by these cigars. This is another one. It's a work which is being controlled by these two plants, and these two plants are in a big vase with water, and because the water is evaporating, and this phenomena is getting even faster by putting in some plants. When the water is evaporating out of the vase, they get lighter and they will be pushed up by a couple of springs, and then they pull on these small wires which run through the wall, and they are connected to these valves here. So very slowly these valves are going up. The speed of that is determined by one, the sun, which is coming through the glass, and then also you have the temperature of the room, which also can speed up the whole process. So the surrounding elements of the space and even outside are determined the speed of the pitch of these organ pipes. And also for the volume, I created sort of a valve which is going up also by an evaporation system, which you can see here in the middle. And then I go to a very small video to demonstrate this pitch. Yes. No. It's being done by natural elements. In this case, actually, I have to tell that this was the first time, and actually the place where I developed this work for, and it's an old shipyard. And outside the shipyard, there is a very big nature reserve in Holland, which has a tide difference of 1 meter. And in this place, I used the tie to move these valves. So even when a boat is passing by there, you get these waves, right? And then you see these valves going simultaneously moving up and down with these waves. But of course, it's very hard to find another location with this kind of circumstances. So I thought, wait a minute, of course, I don't necessarily use a tie difference, but I can do something with plants as well. So that's why this installation has a 2.0 version, and that is with the plants. This is one I made during a residency period of 2 months in the north of New York State, in Utica. Utica is a city like half of Novi Sad, and it's situated or located in the north of the US, in the so-called Rust Belt area. And the Rust Belt area is an area where there is a lot of unemployment and misery, poor a lot of poor people live there, a lot of old buildings, deserted places, etc. So not really fun to be, but I thought it was an interesting place to make an artwork though. And they had a very good residency there with a big workshop, and that's something which I need when I make these kind of installations. Oh yeah, and this unemployment was created mainly because of this economic disaster around 2008, and the car industry, which is in the north of the US, had pretty much a lot of damage in this economical crisis. And that's why there is a lot of misery in that north area. And I thought I will make a work about this economical system which goes down and up and down and up all the time. And actually we never stop doing that. Instead of try to invent another system which could work better for us, we just go on with this, which is very interesting for me. So to symbolize this movement of ups and downs, I created this inflatable installation, and it consists out of shopping bags, which is well, it stands for consumerism, right? And consumerism is something which was more or less created or invented by the US, I think. And also they invented the way of making commercials for selling products. So I thought this would be a perfect installation to exhibit there. And I didn't want to exhibit it in the gallery space this residency owns. I thought it was much more interesting to look for an old deserted commercial building and use the installation as an architectural intervention there. And well, also it's quite a big thing. It's about 4 meters high and 6 meters wide. And it refers to the old-fashioned television bulb screen where they invented the commercials for. And this work is also a sound work, because I use the typical kind of plastic bags they use in hardware stores. So when you grab them, they crackle a lot. And so if I pump it up and I vacuum it again, this sound is being created as well. I have a video for it. Also, it resembles the grow and decay of things. Here you see the decay kind of atmosphere of the installation, which I find just as interesting as the growing situation. And using a space like that has the advantage that it has a very nice echo, which amplifies this crackling sound too. And then the whole cycle takes about 18 minutes, I think. So this is this field of tension of the desire and the acceptance again. You have to take some time to see it grow till it reaches its full potential, and then again you have to see it vacuum again. So on this side you see all these grips. And now it starts vacuum again. This is a sort of a pressure valve. So in the exhibition, it continuously it's making this cycle. This is an installation I created for an island in the north of the Netherlands, on Vlieland, so to say, for an art festival. And also here I worked with big organ pipes, and I made it into sort of sound units. Every organ pipe has a small electric pump device which is connected directly to a solar panel without any batteries. So when the sun starts to shine, this pump starts to work. And the interesting thing about this very simple system is when clouds are coming by, these clouds are acting like a sequencer. So the cloud is blocking the sun, and therefore the pump is stopping immediately, or immediately it stops. And when it is a cloud which is a bit still a bit shiny for the sun, it produces half the amount of energy. Therefore, the electric pump turns half the speed. So the whole installation is very sensitive for weather conditions, and the clouds, which are also always coming in on this island around noon. They act like if they are the composer or the musician for this installation. So the clouds here determine the whole sound composition of the work. And I situated this installation in a sort of a dune pan. So you can lie under it, you can walk under it, and just and enjoy the atmosphere of the place, and wait till the clouds come in. And if you are lucky, it gives a nice variety of sounds. Also, the wind plays part, because I connected every organ pipe with a small wire to a small sail, which is hanging somewhere out of the picture. So when the wind is blowing, they move these sails, and therefore a valve on each organ pipe starts to go up and down, and that pitches the sound as well. So there's all kinds of varieties there. And the whole installation has something to do with the disappearance of a small church village, which was near the sea in 1700 something, and it disappeared into the sea because of a huge storm. And so what I tried to do here with this installation is referring to this village, disappeared village, which disappeared by the unpredictable natural elements there, and just as this disappeared village, my installation is reacted, and also being vulnerable for nature. Video. Here you see these small sails. Not doing anything in this video because there is no wind. Making this kind of installations also, there is a risk involved, and that is if there is, for example, a huge storm, there can be a lot of damage to this installation as well, which is also a sort of a natural element in the work, which I sometimes suffer as well. So it's not only the audience which has this desire to hear things or see things working, and sometimes it doesn't. But also I have the problem of dealing with nature by making these kind of installations. Yes. So on the down part here, there is a valve, and it's connected with a wire on these pulleys. And that goes to the small sail. Well, this is a third one with organ pipes. And I chose for organ pipes and church candles here because the neighbor of this gallery is actually a huge cathedral with one of the most famous organs, the Müller organ, it's called. So, and I was thinking, I'm not religious at all, but I'm fascinated by the way that the church tries to explain to its pupils, so to say, how they should live and have to live. And I was thinking, okay, I make another kind of organ here, which is not telling how to live, but it shows how we live. And what I mean with that is it resembles the slow way of our humans getting older without noticing actually that we are getting older. We only are really aware of it when we see, for example, a friend after 2 years or something, and then you say, "Oh shit, man, you're being much older than 2 years ago." But seeing yourself in the mirror all the time, you don't really notice that you are getting older and older till a certain point, of course. And to explain this kind of way, I used these holy artifacts like the church candles, which determine again the sound composition of this installation. So because it's all different kinds of church candles, they also have a different burning rate. And because the candle is getting shorter when it's lighted, it has a vertical movement, and this vertical movement I translate into this sort of pulley wheel, which slowly turns, and therefore it pulls again a valve on this organ pipe here. And while it's going open, the sound pitches up, And well, here you see some details of this installation. Of course, it goes so slowly that you cannot hear it, and that's what I mean with being, or well, growing older without noticing the fact that we're not really aware of our physical things. Let's see. This black thing here is the pump. When it starts, this rubber will pump itself up like a lung, and that's the way to show that this piece is the heart of the whole installation. And as you can see, there's still a lot of architecture in my installations, especially if you look like details like this one. Oh, I made this work because I received an art prize, and well, that contained an exhibition and money, etc. These are pretty huge bass organ pipes, and that's why the sound is so very, very low. And the fact that you hear it pulsating is because there is some tiny movement in these valves, which are pulled up by the candles, and because these valves are moved just a fraction, it causes this pulsating sound, which I didn't know before I started this thing, but it's a very interesting outcome of the installation, I have to say. I make all my works in my studio.
Where do you bring those pipes?
Oh, I find them on internet. It's second-hand organ pipes. Yeah. That's great. You know, I cannot make them myself. That's too complicated. Yeah. And that's what I like about these old organ pipes. They have already a sort of a meaning, a strong meaning, right, and a history. These things are perhaps 100 years old, and there's a lot of churches in Holland, at least, which are demolished because nobody believes anymore in this faith,
and
right?
Selling online.
And no, there is this guy I know, of course, after searching. And he's a real organ freak, and he's searching all these demolition places, and tries to rescue these organ pipes, and then he sells them for cheap money, actually. And yeah, and for me it's very, very good, actually. So yeah, and
you keep them all in your studio, right?
Yeah. It's in big cases, and sometimes it leaves to an exhibition somewhere. Yeah. And okay.
But I saw on your website that most of your artworks are supported by Mongeum Fund. Do you have some kind of contract with them, like long-term contract?
No, not really. Well, now you mention it, the next project is about the land art biennial in Mongolia, where I met Mariko, actually. And my plan was to drive with my own car along parts of the Silky Road and collect instruments from forgotten tribes or nomadic cultures, so to say. And I was trying to collect iconic instruments from these nomadic cultures and make a new installation with it on this land art biennale. And well, one, it's an interesting project. Two, it's also money-consuming project, because I have to drive there. It takes about 2 months. So I need fundings, and that's where the Mondriaan Fonds is actually the national funding society of the Dutch government. And as an artist, you can apply for a funding there. They have, I think they have about 15 or 20 different kinds of fundings for special kinds of projects. And then you have also fundings for a longer term, let's say a 4-year funding. So it funds in your basic needs for being an artist. So you can, for instance, pay the monthly rent of your studio from it, which is a very luxurious position. And well, if you are lucky,
but this is just also competition.
It's a big competition. Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of foreign artists as well in Holland, and they all can apply for these fundings. So you have to be very lucky, and it's totally subjective, right? Because there is a committee of 4 people, and they say if you are interesting enough or not. So you yeah, and well, in this case I'm lucky, and and after a while you get more of these fundings, and then you are in this system. But it's not said that I will get fundings every time I try to apply for it. But here I did. So I traveled 14,000 kilometers and ended up here in the steppe location of the Biennale, and I made this installation of Mongolian and Kazakh instruments, and I turned them into automatic instruments. And they play also on small solar panels, which you can see here. And it's very similar in the way I showed the other one with the hanging outside organ pipes. So also here the weather conditions determine how this whole installation plays. And the reason I chose for this concept was because nomadic people didn't write in their history. They always used instruments to pass their history and their stories. So they were all real storytellers and singers. And I thought, well, that's an interesting thing to tell my story also, how to tell the story about their the situation they are in at this moment. So they are still with one leg in this tradition of nomadic people, and with their other leg they are already into the modern world with telephones, etc. And also because the government ordered all the nomadic people to go and live in a house. So, like Mariko already said, most people live in Ulaanbaatar now, in the capital city of Mongolia, which is actually the only big city. And because they all go there, there is a lot of slums and a lot of unemployment. So with this development, there's also a lot of misery going on there. And that's what I try to tell with this installation. And this installation is controlled by the weather conditions. And that's also how nomadic people are living in these steppe areas. They rely on the climate, and they rely on the weather conditions. like this installation does. Small video. So as you can see, the solar panels are all pointed into different directions. So that means that every single motor has another speed rate and another angle to the sun. So therefore these rhythms are always changing. And also here the construction is being made by materials which they use for making these gear tents. And in a way this very light and transparent installation is also evolved because I was driving with my car all the way to that country there, and I don't have a studio to make big artworks. So actually the way of my traveling, like a nomadic artist, determined the way this installation ended up. Okay. Last project. This is a project which I collaborated with scientists on the island of Texel, and these scientists are doing research on the plastic pollution in the ocean, and they discovered that on these plastic particles there is a complete new biotope going on from organisms like the one-cell diatom, which you can see here. It's about 1 or 2 millimeters big, and it grows on these plastic pollution parts which are floating on the surface of the ocean. And they grow there because it's the perfect condition for these one-cell organisms. And because they float on the surface, they catch a lot of sun, and that's how they live. Now, I thought that's pretty interesting, and I immediately had to think about one of my building blocks, and that is, of course, these plastic bags. And here I think you can see already all kinds of resemblances structure-wise, this very architectonical thing, and then you have all these air hoses here. So every bag is sort of a living cell, and these air hoses referring a bit to these wires of this organism. So this whole thing here, you see one of the two pump and vacuum systems. And they gave me, as a location, they gave me a church on this island. So I had a couple of ingredients where I had to work with, and I always try to react on the location. So for me it was quite obvious to use one of these typical church windows to create this work for. And I chose for this window because there is sunlight, and also these diatoms of this plastic pollution particles need sunlight. So I thought this was a very legitimate place to put this kind of installation. And also this installation, like the one in the US, resembles this grow and decay of things. And in this case, it resembles the grow and decay of nature itself, which, well, you know, plastic pollution is not a particular nice thing to have. But it's interesting though that on these plastic particles is growing new life again. That's really bizarre. So I was thinking about this constantly grow and decay thing which is going on this earth. So here you see actually both halves of this sort of architectural structure as well. And this one pumps up and vacuums in about 22 minutes, because it's a huge thing, 9 meters high. So it takes a lot of air. So it goes very slowly. I would say in sort of in the speed of nature itself. And it gives a nice time, I think, to contemplate a bit about this whole pollution, plastic pollution thing. And the more, because it's in a church, and in this church there is a lot of chairs, so you can easily sit there and enjoy the crackling sound in the church, as well as see this thing grow and vacuum. And therefore has these two completely different identities as well. So here you see it in a blown up state, and yeah, this one is in the vacuum state. I first go to a video of it. A stop motion video. Here you can see it grow and shrink again. Of course, here it is very much speeded up. But you can see the change in its identity and its character. So, in all these installations, I'm not really pretending to be a sound artist, though, because it's just the sound is actually one of the many things of each work. However, I think 1.5, 2 years ago, I thought it would be very interesting to do sound performances, though, with some of my works. And actually, this work was the first time in which Mariko and me are collaborating by doing a sound performance with this work at the opening of this big exhibition on that island. And what we did here is using the whole installation as a sound generating structure by putting all kinds of microphones attached to it and in front of it. And with the performance, we tried to explain a bit the concept of the whole of this work and the idea behind it. And that's why we bought a lot of groceries in an ordinary supermarket. And as you well know, if you buy stuff, it's all packed in plastic now. So we thought that's an interesting product to use for the sound performance as well. So that's what we did. We unpack all this stuff and use this sound to make the sound performance. And parallel to it, you, as audience, you see this structure growing slowly and vacuum again. So the whole sound performance takes about it's 20-25 minutes. That's the sequence of this work as well. And yeah, so we use a lot of microphones for unwrapping all these products and manipulate the sound of the plastic with a sampler, and use some samples of underwater sea, and so we try to tell a bit of the story and or the concept of this. And this is a small compilation of this performance. You cannot hear the sounds very well here, but in the church it was quite loud, though. Oh, sorry. Let's see. Oh, I should have used the pause. Yeah. So yeah, I think Bojana, here we come to the point that we are collaborating in doing some performances, and in Novi Sad actually our first complete project. And next to the fact that we still are working on our own works as well.
And your concept is basically trying to find new relationship between sound performance and art installation, creating new identity of the whole installation, and showing the audience some hidden parts maybe, or smaller parts, maybe known smaller parts. Do you have some video or pictures from the exhibition from Sulu.
Yes.
Yes. During November at the residency, you were actually focused on abandoned buildings, and Mariko, you showed us some pictures from the building.
Wait a minute.
Using for collecting material. Yes. And then you made atmospheric installation in gallery Sulu using the elements from this abandoned building. This is, I would say, a beginning of a bigger project that you're planning, but now.
Yes, now as an introduction of our future project, we made some kind of found performance using all the found objects, found materials from the site, as well as collected sound from the site, such as like when we are one of the abandoned site. It was like after the rain, so there are lots of like water dripping from the ceiling, and together with the sound of pigeons, lots of them are living inside, as well as bats.
Bats too, yeah.
Bats too, and that's all the sound have lots of good echo inside of this abandoned buildings, and it was making certain atmosphere as well. And you want to talk something about that?
Yes. Yeah, what we did. So what we did is collect a lot of stuff, which resembles or gives an identity in a new place. In this occasion, Sulu Gallery. And we made a small exhibition with all these materials you can find there, and it's on one hand it's a modest exhibition, but also it's an outcome of the research we did for a bigger work in 2001. And yeah, Mariko is performing with all the glass particles and
Continue. Sorry.
Well, I'm listening to Mariko's lecture. I realized that actually in our collaboration in this project. We are complementing each other's work, so it's not even that we completely create a sort of a symbiotic new thing because we work together, but we still carry on with our own ideas about making an artwork. And it's interesting that we can easily combine the two because I'm thinking in another sort of scale like Mariko does. So there's no well, it easily combines in that way, and that's how we try to evolve our way of working together. And yeah, so by researching these abandoned places, we try to come up with a new concept for a big installation work. And this is all actually more or less coming automatically out of the things we collect there as being typical parts of these abandoned buildings which are still there. And so we work with glass, we work with foam, and we try to take noise out of all these things. Also how Mariko is making the composition of this glass. It creates sound, and I don't know if you hear it on the background, but it's the noise of computer tapes. And we found these old-fashioned computer tapes in one of these abandoned places, and by experimenting with an old Walkman, tape Walkman, we put these computer tapes in this Walkman, and then you hear these weird kind of sounds, and that's what we use in this performance as well. So actually everything you hear and see in this exhibition and in the performance is being or is collected in Novi Sad. And by present these well, you could say it's all trash. By presenting it in a different way and in another space, it gets a new sort of identity too, which is a rather strange experience, I have to say, because I never done it in this way before. And you see that the audience which is visiting the gallery is really looking in a very interesting way to this junk materials. And I found that very intriguing in a way. So who knows what all this information we have now, how it leads to the end result in 2001. You?
And one thing which I really wanted to present in this performance was in the end of this movement, which I put all the glasses into one line. I was after this I walk on the glasses and to try to make the sound, and plus try to break the glasses into even smaller pieces. And in that way, I was trying to make the glasses, all the pieces of glasses into particle level, which makes some kind of atmosphere in the gallery similar to the atmosphere in the abandoned buildings. Because those abandoned buildings, actually when you are there, you feel the air is not really good, because all the dust and all the broken materials and sometimes chemical materials, which was between the walls, like staying there like 10 years with mixture with this acid rain, and it creates certain air or atmosphere which actually not very healthy to your throats, but somehow you could also feel a strange kind of dusty, strange atmosphere from all mixture of all of these materials. I think previous.
Yeah, this is all rough material. We don't have a decent compilation yet.
Because we just had finished this exhibition, and next day we needed to come here, so didn't really have to do this.
Yeah, it's well.
So I was working on these glasses, and I was working on another materials from the roof, and moss and plants. All of those are collected from the side. And while I work, I was making all of the materials into smaller pieces and help them to be decomposed into the air of the gallery. And in that way, I was trying to make the atmosphere of the gallery a bit dirty, a bit closer to the site where we found all the materials.
Oh well.
Oh, well, yes.
I think that's it. That's it, no? Anybody has some questions or?
Does anybody have some questions?
How did you choose your places for your installation in nature?
How do you use places?
How do I choose them?
Yeah.
Well, the example in the dunes. Well, the organization just says, well, we do the exhibition on the whole island. There is some natural reserves where you're not allowed to come, but for the rest, so what I did was I rented a bicycle and went on this whole island, and with some forest maintenance people there, I talked, and they came up with a couple of sites after I was explaining what I was looking for, and then we found this huge dune pan, which I thought was a very interesting space. And yes, because I always deal with a space, or outside or inside, I found this dune pan very attractive. And so it's a bit intuitive, actually, how I find these places. And a lot of times the organization just says, well, you have to do something in the church. And so it can be all kinds of.
How do you present when you set up your installation?
Yes, yes.
How do you present it to the audience? You invite the audience to the location.
Oh yeah. Well, in the case of this island exhibition, which happens a lot actually in the Netherlands, although, is that the audience gets a map with all the locations, and then they rent a bike or go on by foot, and they can choose wherever they want to go, and then they will meet all these artworks.
And for how long it usually stays?
From 1 to 3 months. Yeah. Mostly these kind of exhibitions are in summertime and take about 2 to 3 months. Yeah. And some are even that big that you cannot even visit all the artworks in one day. So you need more days, and that's also a bit of a commercial idea behind it, because it attracts a lot of tourists. And so in that way the organization of the exhibition is also getting fundings from that area. So it works in both ways. That's also a reason why there is so many biennials in Japan, right?
Yes.
Because
touristic
yeah.
reason, and activate the local kind of.
Yeah, it's a way to finance the work, and also it's a way to attract people. Yeah. So yeah, it's an interesting way actually.
Okay, but you get one installation in Mongolia.
Yeah.
Seems very like some desert or something. And
yeah, that's an interesting one concerning your question, though, because well, it's a land art exhibition, which is being held every 2 years. And what they do is they have a sort of a residency stay on a deserted place in Mongolia. In this case, it was like 400 kilometers east of the capital, in the middle of nowhere, which is a very nice place, of course. And there they invite all the artists there in a sort of a camp with ger tents. We stayed there for 2 weeks, let's say. And everybody is doing his thing, making his work wherever they want to do it. And after that, everything is being documented with photographers and video makers. Then the whole thing is getting deinstalled, and the pictures and the videos are exhibited in the Museum of Contemporary Art in the capital city. And first I thought, wow, this is a very strange way of doing an exhibition, no? Build it up and making pictures and deinstall everything. And I was talking to this curator about it, and then he said a very interesting thing. He said, okay, Ronald, but it's land art biennial, so how do we supposed to make land art in the museum? That's not possible. So that's why we chose for this location on this steppe area, and after that present all the outcome of it in the city. Because, well, apparently they think you cannot attract audience to the steppe location. However, I think it's more interesting to get the people there instead of in the museum. But exhibit in the museum is a bit of an old-fashioned way of doing exhibitions. And let's not forget, Mongolia is still a developing country. It's a third world country. So they're a bit behind with all this way of thinking. And the organization itself is from Germany, though. But still, they want to do it in this traditional way. Yeah.
So, what are your next plans? Are you continuing with the collaborations? You're planning some new exhibitions, as I know.
Yeah, we both have our own exhibitions coming up in all different kind of countries, and we have also new ideas to do together. Yeah.
But this will develop from this root of idea of sound performance.
Yeah.
Still dealing with this.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I think the most important things to do collaboration is it's like because we have like similar taste for artwork, but both of us are really having a different perspective and good at different things. And in that way, we can help each other and develop each other more. If you do same things for we do same work for same things, maybe it will have more fight and argument going on. But if we focus on different things, it can work much better, I think.
Yeah, and also, well, yeah, being an artist is a solitary thing, right? I think, and sometimes after days I think, wow, man, the only thing I said in 3 days is thank you very much in the supermarket, and for the rest I'm busy in my studio as a loner. So doing this collaboration is really a very interesting and welcome change. Yeah, to do things with others, and still it is in the same field of work, and that's easier because you already have a network, and you can also share each other's network, which is also interesting, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you can really feel in your collaborative works, you can really feel both parts.
Yes, so yes, and that's okay.
Both art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you have some questions for students? Because I know last time you had some questions for students.
Oh no, we didn't do that. Actually, it was merely an idea in the end.
Thank you. Does anybody have something to add or say? Okay. Then thank you.
Thank you very much for
presentation, and we hope to see you again in Belgrade soon.
Yeah, for sure.
Or something.
Good. Yeah, thank you for having us.